Hey folks, welcome back to another HP Gaming GameLINK video. Today we are going to be shooting for the stars, trying to solve all manner of disasters and trying to stay alive on the International Space Station as we take a look and review the 1 to 4 player game, Intrepid. Hey folks, welcome back. For those of you who don't know me, and you should by now, my name is Matt. It's okay though, we are destined to become the very best of friends. Trying something a little bit different today. We're going to be doing some micro reviews for you to get through the backlog of games that we've unboxed, but then forgotten to talk all about because we're too busy playing and unboxing all sorts of crazy new toys. The one I want to talk about today is one that surprised the hell out of me. It intrigued me. We unboxed it. We've played it. Oh my gosh, there is so much to unpack here. I'm talking about UPROARIOUS Games' Intrepid, which is a 1 to 4 player cooperative game in which you are trying to effectively avert disaster and save the International Space Station from burning up on re-entry. There are a number of different scenarios that are available for this one. I think in the base game there are 2, and then with the expansion there's another 2 on top of that, Mission Critical, the expansion. If you went all in on the Kickstarter, you very well have got all of these different components. This is a game that when you open the box and have a look at it, you sort of go, what the hell am I getting myself into? It can be a little bit confusing and daunting when you open the box. I'm not going to lie, I myself did the unboxing and went, okay, this could be a bit crazy. Hence why we're at this big table here, because we needed the space to lay it all out for you. This is a game that at its core has a very sort of pandemic-y feel. Obviously, you are working together to save and avert disaster. But in this instance, you are trying to solve the problems and make sure that the ISS is livable while you try and complete missions to complete your objectives. So I will say this. While this is a game that is designed for 1 to 4 players, playing solo is bloody hard. It is a challenge. This is a game that is designed to kick you in the face, wait till you're on the ground, and then kick you squarely again, not once, but 3 times with a steel-capped boot. This is a game in which you are laying out tiles from one of the astronauts or cosmonauts from different nationalities across the planet. And you are going to be building in modules on the board that you see here, the space station modules. And then you'll be rolling dice and using combinations of said dice to activate certain aspects of the station to generate the 4 basic resources you need to survive. Resources are nutrition, power, oxygen, and climate. And if any of those at any one time falls below the threshold that you need to sustain life on the station, you will immediately lose the game. In spectacular fashion, I would imagine. So this is a resource management game. This is a risk versus reward game as well, because you are also trying to complete 3 missions, which doesn't sound like a lot, but the missions aren't just one and done. Each mission card has layers of objectives you need to complete in order to complete the card. So you may have a card that requires you to spend 2 oxygen on the first turn, but the next round you must spend 5 oxygen and then 10. And then, so if you're not generating those resources even more and more and more as the rounds go on, you're in for a world of hurt. And in order to complete the card, you will need to complete 5 steps of the mission in order to claim that card as completed. And you can start multiple missions as you play through the game, so that there might be an opportunity where you can complete or have all the missions happening at any one time. But that is not always necessarily a good thing, especially when you are trying to generate as many resources as possible. So there's a bit of an overview about the game and how it works. You have these wonderful little power dials or resource dials here. And these are effectively, where are we? I'll start there. These are effectively your power wheels, your resource wheels, and you can see here there's this massive grid of numbers at the top. And the cube that you'll place on this board will dictate how many resources you are currently generating for that round. And if the cube ever drops into the red at the resource check step of the round, you'll lose the game. So you need to make sure that if you're responsible for power, you need to make sure that you generate enough power to keep everyone alive. Now, playing this, there are a few differences depending on player counts and things like that as well, which I kind of dig. But the fact that you've got this giant board with a dial that actually allows you to spin as you build more parts of the station or repair more parts of the station, they consume power or nutrition or oxygen or climate control or whatever the case may be. So while you might be able to generate, oh, I'm going to build this thing here, which allows me to generate an extra 10 oxygen on my turn, fantastic, you're also going to pull another 6 power. So you'll have to spin this down to drain the 6 units of power from the power dial. So as a cooperative game, you need to understand exactly where each resource is at, even if it's not the one that's under your control, to ensure that you are helping your teammates to generate as much resources as possible. Now, this is where it gets crazy because you are playing as one of the cosmonauts or astronauts that is on the ISS. Each one of these astronauts or cosmonauts plays very, very differently from one another. In fact, there are none, I don't think there's any that are the same. And they all play, yeah, as I said, incredibly different. Some may simply want you to roll doubles, and rolling doubles is a good thing. The downside with that is if you're rolling doubles, you're using up multiple dice per activation of these tiles, which limits the dice that are in your pool. The way the game works is you'll get one of these cool little trays of all the different dice, and you will effectively, if I can get them out, have on your hero board a number of die that you're able to use. And when you start the game, for example, with the United States, you will only get to roll, is it 2 dice, I think, per turn? 2 dice to start. That's it, out of a massive pool of 15. So at the start of the round, you'll roll the dice, and that will give you numbers to work with to activate on the tile. So it could be you need a number from 1 to 6 to activate this tile, and that will generate X resources. As the game goes on, you can spend upgrade points, capacity points, resource bonus points to upgrade and therefore give yourself more dice to roll in your pool. But your resource management and die management, particularly the way they're placed on the board, is key. Some of the tiles that you'll be able to use on the board may allow you to gain extra dice. For example, this one, if you place a 3 on this particular tile, say it's in here, it might allow you to gain a die, but rather than re-rolling it into your pool to get whatever value comes up, it might say you have to gain a die, but it's at a value 1 or below, 1 above or 1 below the die you've just placed. So therefore it becomes a mind game. If you know you've got another tile that needs a 5, don't place something that's a 3 and get a +1 because it's not going to be enough. Dies that allow you to re-roll dice into your pool, as with Russia, is, risk versus reward, because you may be able to roll the die into your pool, but you might have to discard another one in the process. So dice management, and I mean, for me, as someone who absolutely sucks at dice rolling, my dice rolling skills are not fantastic. Having a game that relies heavily on your die rolls and die manipulation proves quite a challenge for me as well. But because they place, I don't know, the US is one of the easier ones to play, but you've got other folks, you've got Malaysia, you have Brazil, there's 2 from South Africa, there is a Brazilian cosmonaut as well as United Kingdom, Canada is represented, Germany is here, Russia, of course, with the nuclear vessels, and then you've got Japan, and of course Brazil. And Japan relies on complex manipulation of the die. So you actually have to lock the die into position, and then die facing on the different sides of the die that relies on that mechanic. Russia allows you to re-roll lots of dice. South Africa is different again. And the sheer complexity of some of the different cosmonauts and their abilities with their tiles is quite staggering. The learning curve on this one is actually quite high. That gives you an overview of the game. That gives you an overview about some of the mechanics and things as well. There are tokens. There's 4 different scenarios, including a training module as well to get you into the game. I will say the training module, at first glance, if you've never had the game before, is very hard. But once you sort of understand the mechanics of what it is you're trying to achieve, it does make it a little bit easier. Having your special career cards, you get to pick a badge at the start of each game, which will give you specific powers you can use once per round. That is very much like your role that you would choose to liken it to Pandemic. And that is something that is obviously works both for and against you, depending on which one you choose. At the same time, during all of the different disasters that you can face, different tiles and things can take damage, and you'll take one of these little damaged cubes and you may very well lose that tile in its entirety during the course of the game. You can add more tiles to the board by paying certain costs and obviously causing trouble. You may also be asked to roll the disaster die, which is this D8, yellow D8 that is going to generate some crazy problems as well. The sheer concept of this and the scope of what it is you were trying to achieve is what intrigued me first and why I backed in the first place. Yes, it was a dice game and I went, but a cooperative dice game or a cooperative game in this household is always going to come up trumps, because usually if it's competitive, we result into fighting, infighting and take that action. So to be able to play a game where it's got that real Pandemic feel, but almost on a grander scale, if that makes sense. There is a sense of urgency as well with this one as the rounds progress. And of course the light up on the tiles, the blue and red lights. Each of the resource tiles has either a blue or a red light. If you're using a red resource card, you can only play 2 red tiles on the board. Your tiles in here are 2-sided, and that will dictate which ones you play face up, and that will also dictate how the breakdown of resources is managed. This is not an easy game. This is quite complex in its brilliance, but at the same time, as I said, there is a massive learning curve here, and I think that could be quite polarizing for a lot of people. Your average gamer who comes into this not knowing anything about it, and you sit down at the table and say, hey, let's try and teach, that's going to be a hard hurdle, I guess, for lack of a better term. There is a lot to unpack with this game, and please don't get me wrong, as a review, I can tell you that I absolutely love this game. It is an incredible challenge, which I'm unfortunately happy to say that I am yet to beat. I found that with the base game of Pandemic, we played it, and once we started beating it on the regular, when we sort of learned the ropes and the mechanics, we found that it started to collect dust on the shelf a little bit, and then of course Pandemic Legacy came along. So Intrepid is one of those games that you want to try and jump in, and it says 90 minutes on the box, but I will say I find the 90-minute lead time to be probably a little bit on the conservative side. I would imagine games can go longer, and I would expect if you've got 4 players around the table and they're not seasoned gamers, this is something that's going to creep up to the 120-minute mark. Having said that, the different astronauts and their different abilities, the fact that they all play so very differently, gives this game a nice, lovely feel every time we get it to the table. The fact that there is always something new to discover at this point, because we haven't played it a gajillion billion times with all the different combinations, is awesome. Being able to trade dice with other players, or die, I should say, with other players, is kind of important too, with your resource management. But at the same time, I found that playing this game as a couple with my wife was a much more interesting and engaging experience, and a much more successful, even though we didn't complete the game, experience than going solo. Solo, the modules are very hard because you've got to obviously do it all on your own in terms of resource management and remembering it all. It's still a great experience, but it is an incredibly difficult challenge. This is one that, I don't know, it's very clever. It's very clever in that it is clever in its deviousness, I guess, for lack of a better term. And having, sitting there and thinking, oh, we're ahead, we're doing well, only to flip that next disaster card and have it smack you squarely in the face. That's quite brutal. And this isn't a case of, you flip a card a la Pandemic, and it's a specific location on the board, it could literally shower the entire place with disaster cubes. So, you know, be very careful. Component-wise and production value, there is so much going on here. The fact that, I mean, I love the mechanics of the spin down boards. I love the idea of having that big dial that turns, but unfortunately, some of them, and particularly when you've got all the expansion content packed into the main box, which is huge, as you can see, the dials warp. And I don't know whether that was in transit or whether this just happened over time, but the warping on the dial does make things a little bit difficult. And if you knock the table, they can spin a little bit on their own when they've warped and they're standing up on their end. That is a bit of a downer. However, having said that, the main tile board is fantastic. It's a really thick, durable board with some really heavy set plastic to hold the tiles in place. And there are little ridges that allow you to pick up the tiles off the board or place them down without having to, you know, scratch around trying to grab them out, which is fantastic. The cubes that come with the game are standard Pandemic-y sized cubes, which is fine. The dice, I love. The dice are fantastic. They've got different colors. They are etched. They are not screen printed. A big tick from me for those of you that have watched the channel previously. And, you know, they're not too big and bulky. So when you're rolling 7 dice at a time, it doesn't feel cumbersome. The best part about this, I mean, the card, I will come back to the card stock because that's a bit hit and miss for me. But the best part about this is the game trays storage solutions for each of the different characters that you can play as, or the different astronauts and cosmonauts you can play as. You can grab one of the sets of dice in its own little tray, and it's got marked storage and then supply. You can take the first lot of die out and go for it. You can keep the die you need in storage until you need them, dice in there until you need them. You've got little resource cubes that you can use for your player board. And then inside, where's my US friend? There we go. And then you've got these. Now these have little feet on them so you can stack them up as well, which is quite fantastic for storage inside the box. But on top of that, you've also got just a complete player kit in this one little box. It's fantastic. All the tiles are here, the worker placement cards, the instructions on how to play, all the bells and whistles. There's a solo mode variant on the back of each of these cards. The tiles and the player components are just absolutely brilliant. The storage solutions work fantastically. They sit really well in the box. The vacuum tray at the base of the box is fantastic as well, and really allows you to pack everything up and only get out what you need without, you know, having to go through hundreds and hundreds of items of stuff. The only downside, obviously the warping we talked about, but the card stock is not the best. For what it is, it's fine, but at the same time, in order to protect the cards, I'm probably going to have to sleeve them, and they will not fit in the box as flush as I would like if they are sleeved. So that's just a small gripe that I have about what is otherwise a fantastic production. The quality of components, the punch outs, what few there are, there's not a lot, are fantastic. The dice are amazing. The tokens, the plus minus amplify and shortage tokens are fine. A nice thick chipboard. But for the most part, this is a game that presents quite the challenge. And I suggest if you are not a seasoned gamer and you are used to more mainstream board games, this is something you are just going to find way too involved. If you are after a hardcore Pandemic version, or a hardcore version of Pandemic, better English, then this is something you should have a look at. It is rules heavy at your first glance. The rule book is extensive. The rulebook is clear on how it all plays out. Having it there to refer to as you play is obviously a good idea. But having this at the table with all the different boards set up around it, all the different astronauts and cosmonauts doing their thing, trying to find all the best resources or the best way to manage the resources so they can stay alive to complete the tasks they need to complete. That's the bulk of the game, but that's only one part of the game because you've still actually got to complete 3 missions to win. So there is a lot going on. It is not a simple game, but once you understand the mechanics of a few of these astronauts and cosmonauts and how they use their dice to their advantage, that's where the game becomes sweet. And I found that as well when my wife and I play this. We find that we do sort of default to a couple of different astronauts and cosmonauts. She does like to play as the United Kingdom. I have played Germany, Japan, United States, and Russia. And Russia is very much push your luck in terms of rolling again, taking a die out, rolling again. But it is a good way to increase your die pool count beyond your basic, your standard setup. So that's a good way to get more dice in. The US, rolling doubles, relying on rolling same numbers that you can split across the board, is more entry level, but at the same time, it's a great place to start if you're looking for an astronaut to begin with. In closing, I do think this is one that, I really enjoy this. I think it's something that is quite a challenge. And for me, I'd rather have something that is a challenge that I can really sink my teeth into than something that's going to take me 5 or 10 playthroughs. And then I'm just like, meh, done with that, move on. Very heavy, as I said, in terms of its learning curve, but at the same time, the reward of getting to know this one and really getting through a couple of good playthroughs, you'll find that this is one that's going to present quite the challenge in the best kind of ways. That's my review of Intrepid. Those are my final thoughts. I think it's definitely worth checking out. It is definitely something that is not to be taken lightly, and that is for sure. Thank you very much, folks, for listening to my ramblings. As always, big thanks and shout outs to our Patreon subscribers for all of their support, allowing us to do all the crazy stuff we do. We really appreciate it. I appreciate that very much. Thank you very much. One big chef's kiss to you all. For those of you watching for the first time, thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed it. By all means, please click like and subscribe, all the rest of it. If you have comments on this one, if you've played this one, I would love to hear from you. Which is your favorite astronaut / cosmonaut? Which is your favorite scenario to play, or your least favorite scenario to play? Let us know in the comment section below. I will get back to you in due course. Otherwise, I'm going to go clear the table and break out another game. We have another couple of unboxings for you. We have some more stock that has just come in, including the highly anticipated Disney Villainous Bigger and Badder, which is now shipping to all of our lovely folks from the store. We'll get a copy of that when we can, but unfortunately, I've got to make sure that I look after the customers first. We will see you back here for more crazy gaming content, more reviews coming your way. We have some unboxings. Richard Garfield's Hunger, or The Hunger, has just arrived. We have some more Kickstarters coming your way as well. So check back with us whenever we post something new. And until then, get out there, play more games, and we'll see you back here very soon for more awesome, epic board gaming content. Until then, though, it is bye for now.